great wedge players do 4 things. Today I'm going to show you what those 4 things are and help you do the same thing that a great wedge player does. The first thing that a great wedge player does is they're able to dial in the distance. That's what great wedge play is all about. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about here is getting the right club in your hands. I've got about a 110-yard shot right here. Now, I've got 2 clubs. All right, I've got my Tour Max VLS wedge, my 56 degree, and I've got my 48 degree. So the first thing that great wedge players do is they get the right club in their hands. And what that means is that generally speaking, they go to a little less loft than more loft. Now, why is that important? Well, if I was to hit my 56 and try to hit it 110 yards, which I can do, okay, what I would have to do though in order to make that happen is make a really long and aggressive swing. And as the swing gets long and aggressive, the ball will really rise high in the air. So the first thing that great wedge players do is they typically grab less loft, which allows them to control the trajectory of the shot and bring the ball flight down, which at the end of the day helps them control distance. And we're going to talk more about that in a second. All right, so that's number 1. Number 2, great wedge players, what do? Number 2 is they have the perfect setup. So what is that setup? Well, let's go through it. The first thing is ball position. We want the ball to be positioned in the middle of the stance. All right, that's different than a hybrid or a driver or a 6-iron. A wedge is further back in the stance. So you can find that position by simply putting your feet together. I've got the ball right in the middle, okay? And I'm going to take a step towards the target and then an equal step away from the target. All right, so here we go. Let's go through it again. Feet together, ball in the center, aim the club face, step towards the target, step away from the target, equal distance, and now I've got the ball in the center of the stance. We've talked a little bit about trajectory, right? And controlling that ball flight. So ball position will help with that, but also where the weight is at on the feet. So let's talk a little bit about that. I want you to feel, this is what great wedge players do, right? That they have more weight on their lead foot. Now, you know, in the vertical line swing system, in the book, The Bad Lie at VLS Golf and all the types of stuff that we've been teaching you here, that we like the 60-40 split, right? You know that, right? Nick, do they know that or not? I mean, come on. Okay, Nick gave us a thumbs up. You give us a thumbs up because you know, if you're following us here at VLS Golf, we love the 60-40. But when it comes to great wedge play, I want more weight on your lead foot. I want 70, almost 70%. So I've got 70% of my weight on my lead foot. Now here's the thing. We'll talk more about this in the motion, but we're going to keep most of that weight there through the actual swing, which we're going to talk about in just a second. So let's recap. I got the right club. I've got the ball in the center of my stance. I've got definitely more weight into my lead foot, roughly about 70%. 2 last things that we're going to talk about in the setup, and then we're going to get to the third thing that great wedge players do, and that has to do with feet position, okay, feet position, toes, and also the handle. So I want you to feel, and I want your toes to be flared slightly. Notice this, see how my toes are flared out a little bit? Okay, I don't want them square, I want them flared. This is important because this is going to lead into the third tip when we start talking about the motion, why those toes are flared out a little bit, right? And then the last tip in the setup that great wedge players do is the butt end of the club is slightly in front of the golf ball. Everybody see that? So this would be maybe, let's just say this is equal with the ball, this would be slightly in front. So I'm actually de-lofting it just a little bit. All right, now the third thing that great wedge players do is they make the proper motion. Now what do I mean by that? Well, this shot here, it's not a chip shot, it's not a full swing shot, it's kind of this in-between shot. Now it's also a finesse shot, right? So when we swing the golf club with a wedge to be a great wedge player, it's more rhythm and pace, meaning I'm definitely turning my hips, I'm definitely turning my shoulders, but my arms are really working in unison. That's the key, in unison with my pivot. So let me just demonstrate that because I think it will help you understand it better. So when my arms work in unison with my body pivot, it looks more like this. Everybody see that? All right, kind of looks like our little 3-setter, right? We love those 3-setters. Now that's different than when we're hitting like a full swing, like a driver, right? When you've watched any of our driver tips, you know that we got the nice big pivot and we're really letting those arms go. But to be a great wedge player, we want the arms to work in unison with the body. So it looks something like this. We're set in here. My arms just work with my pivot versus working not with them in unison. So that would be the third thing. Now, the question is you might be asking yourself, all right, Todd, that sounds good, but how do I practice that? Well, I would do the 3-setter. I think that's the 3-setter. And years ago, we used to hit some shots with almost like a towel under our arms to kind of feel those arms together. But basically what you can do is just kind of feel like your arms right here, okay, are connected to your chest. I don't want them to be tight or tense, but they're kind of connected to your chest. And notice how see how they kind of stay with me? Okay, they're not really separating. Separation is okay when we get into like the drivers and things we talked, but for great wedge play, they stay relatively pretty connected. Let me go ahead and hit a shot so I can demonstrate that motion. I got a couple other things we're going to talk about here. So I got that ball position, I got the forward shaft lean. There we go. Notice the finish a little bit there. Now, I also want to say this on the motion, okay? On the motion, I want you to feel like your weight stays on your lead foot, okay? Because you notice how I took a nice little divot there? You want to hit ball and then ground. And one of the things that you're probably learning in the vertical line swing system, we talked about this in the book, the bad line, all the stuff, is the pivot has a huge impact on where the club hits the ground. So on a wedge shot, when we really want to be hitting down on that golf ball and catching the ball and then the ground first, right? I want you to feel like you're pivoting and turning, okay, but that your weight is staying pretty forward. Okay, that was pretty good. There was maybe a tad thin. I came up and out of it, but the trajectory was down just a little bit. How can you practice that motion? How can you practice staying on that lead foot a little bit? And then we're going to talk about the last thing that great wedge players do, the number 4. So how do we practice that motion? Well, pretty simple. Put your lead foot forward like this, trail foot back, okay, almost kind of like a kickstand. See that? Okay, so there, and just make some swings. Okay, now they're not going to be full swings, right? But this motion right here really keeps my sternum and my chest forward and over the golf ball versus off the golf ball. Now the fourth thing that great wedge players do is they have a process or a way to manage the distance that the golf ball travels. All right, that's where we all started with this. But there are a couple different ways that you can change the distance that the golf ball travels, how long it goes, right? Club selection, obviously, but there's 2 other ways. All right, so let me share with you the first one that's a little bit more challenging, and then we'll talk about the easy one. The first one, okay, is just length of swing, right? So when you swing a wedge, obviously, you might swing it where your lead arm goes to about a 9 o'clock position. Let me go ahead and hit a shot here, okay? 9, and then through, okay? The other one then you could do would be just a little bit longer, like a 10:30 swing. So now the lead arm goes to the 10:30, like think of a clock, right? 10:30. So I've got 10:30, I've got 9 o'clock, right? And each one of those lengths of backswing would produce a different length shot, right? All things being equal. Now the other way that you can control the distance that the golf ball travels, and I think is an easier way. We would like easier, wouldn't we, Nick? I mean, isn't easier always better? That's why you're here at VLS Golf. Hey, be sure to also tell us where you're from. If you're still watching right now, this is awesome because you're learning something, and tell us where you're from, tell us how old you are. We love reading those comments and we love to respond to them when we can. So the easiest way to control the distance other than the club selection is where you grip the golf club. Let me say that again, where you grip the golf club, right? So let's say I want to make 2 swings, both of them at the 10:30 length. 2 swings, 10:30 length. But one of them I'm going to grip down, let's say a couple inches, and I swing it to 10:30, that ball is going to go a certain distance because I've made the club shorter. The next one, I grip it normal around the end, I swing it to 10:30, that golf ball is also going to go a certain distance. So great wedge players have a process that they go through. These are the 4 steps that you can also do to become a great wedge player.